Just accept that like you're not going to get the cartoon like cookie cutter good parent you want and go like this is a person doing their best. Even some people's best sucks, but like cherish the time you have left. Just pull the trigger and like reach out and go like, hey, let's just connect.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too. Whoa, okay. Happy 2023. I can't believe we're back. Saw some good memes that was like, congratulations on surviving 2020 again. I kind of feel that way. I just got back from New York City. I spent Christmas in Manhattan. Beautiful there. We're giving snow. We're giving energy. We're giving 12 degrees. We're giving 5 degrees. We're giving long underwear. It was really fun. I would say the most surprising. Oh, my dog is shaking her collar. The most unique thing that happened to me was not even to me. It was that my little sister got engaged. They've been dating 3 years. It's really cute. They met in La La Land as an LAW. They met while practicing the law at the same law firm. And that was so cute of them. And that was so cute of them. It is a lot with my recent breakup from just a few months ago. So my fam was like, are you okay? I was like, I'm great. I did a bit of a comedic caption moment on my Instagram at Chelsea Who Else, if you would like to check out what I said. The caption was something like, my sister said yes, and I said, when's the party? Which kind of encapsulates how I feel. I better have a date to this wedding, just saying. Hopefully it's a 2024 moment, which will give me some time. Definitely a lot of feelings if you've been through recent loss, recent heartbreak, recent life changes, and then someone else has an exciting life change, such as an engagement, a pregnancy announcement, bought a house, new job, whatever it is, promotion, new dog. It just brings up feelings for you. So that was definitely something I was feeling. More thoughts on that soon. We saw a Broadway show, except it got canceled. We were supposed to see A Strange Loop, which has rave reviews, but for some reason it got canceled. They didn't say why. So then we ended up seeing the show And Juliet, which was really good, just like not what we thought was going to be happening. And we got dinners and ate food and ate croissants and like all of the delicious things. For this episode, I'm going to start things off this year with Jessica Michelle Singleton because she's absolutely hilarious, a comedian in her own right. You've seen her all over the country, reaching #1 on both iTunes and Amazon comedy charts. My dog is being so annoying. I'm going to keep going. Making this her second #1 album after the release of her debut album, which was called Please Don't Leave Me. Jessica Michelle is a regular at the world-famous Comedy Store, where she can be seen performing whenever she's in town between touring, and she's the idiot host of the popular social and culture podcast Ignorance is Blessed. She's a recurring guest on the Stephanie Miller Show on Free Speech. Her comedy can be heard regularly on Sirius XM's Raw Dog Comedy Central channel. And today we discuss the loss of her dad to blood clots in his lungs. Again, she is so funny. Hit her up on Instagram at JMS Comedy from some serious lols. She's verified. She's funny. She's touring. She's giving laughs. She's giving dead dad. She's giving sex jokes. She's giving it all. One of my favorites. So this will be a really fun and funny episode to start things off with. So thanks for hanging out with us. If you would like to share your grief story, as always, hit me up on the Instagram at DyingOfLaughterPodcast or email me at DyingOfLaughterPodcast@gmail.com. And remember, YOLO, you only die once. JMS, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you. I'm obsessed with the name of your album. Just right off the bat, Horny for Death. I feel like we're in a great place.
Yeah, happy to be here. I feel like, yes, this is definitely the right place for that album title to come up. It's, I love me some death, and it feels like you also talk about it and maybe enjoy that process.
Let's discuss death. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I remember when I did your podcast that
I'm looking forward to it. Sorry. Me too, though. Anyway, sorry.
Wait.
Yes, you did my podcast. It was an amazing interview, by the way. Thanks for doing that.
Of course. When was that? I feel like that must have been 2019, or was that 2018?
Might have been 2018.
Wow.
God, it's 2020 feels like a decade, so it's hard to tell. It was like before that, before the big pandemic.
Yeah, I think, maybe it was, because I think mine was like just about to come out, and now it's been like almost 2 years. So I guess maybe that was 2018. And I remember like doing your pod, and then I always have an awkward thing with comedians because you have to have lost a parent or sibling to come on. So I'm always just like, would totally have you on, but like can't. And then I was like to you, hey, call me if anything changes. And like now something's changed. So now we're here.
You're like, what's up? Your dad died. So you want to do my podcast?
Straight up. And I've always wanted to have you on anyways. So like win-win, lose-lose. Really a lose-lose, but a win-win, you know?
But it's, you know, it's lose, win, win, lose. And that's the circle of life.
Exactly.
And death, I guess.
So I am going to ask you about your dad and your stand-up. But first, one question I ask everyone is about their goldfish moment. And your goldfish moment was the first time you thought about or conceptualized death in some way. For some people, it was a goldfish. Is there a moment from your childhood that comes to mind? Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
Oh my God. Yeah. It was a hamster. I had a hamster named Arnold Schwarzenhamster, and he died when I was 8. Yeah, I know. It was a really bad attempt at a pun. Like it was, me and my brother thought it was so funny. And now I'm like, oh, if I had a kid that did that, I'd be like, that's a stupid name.
Did you call him Arnold, or like, did you call him?
I just called him Arnold. Yeah. Okay. It was Arnold. Just a little hamster in a cage. And we didn't have any other pets. So I loved Arnold. I'd pick him up and play with him all the time. And then one day he just, on his back, stiff, arms to the sky, Arnold was no more. And so I buried him in our little front garden, and I made I was a churchgoer at the time, little Catholic, in the choir, dork, and I made him a little cross out of popsicle sticks and put it in the yard over him. And I remember that it was raining, and it's like, I'm so fucking dramatic. I remember just like looking out the window at the little cross while it was raining. Crying. It's like, that's so like, I mean, I was just a little kid, but I was like, my friend Arnold. And then no deaths for quite a while. And when I moved to Alaska, real high rate of murder, suicide. I had like tons of friends die in high school, which was wild. But yeah, it was a hamster that did me in initially.
I love the nostalgic imagery, very much like indie film circa 1989, just like looking at the window. I feel like the world became black and white in that moment for you, and just the burial, everything. It's a nice image. It's a weird feeling when the first thing dies. How old were you at the time?
I think I was like 7, and now that I'm saying this, I'm like, oh, it's kind of fucked up because I'm pretty sure my grandpa died before that, and it just like didn't. It was like I didn't understand. He didn't live in the same city as us. So I maybe saw my grandparents like 3 or 4 times before my grandpa died. So I guess I was like too young to wrap my head around him or like his death for some reason. Because I'm now like, it's kind of messed up that I was like, but the hamster.
Right. You're like hamster over Gramps. Well, it makes sense if you're seeing the hamster more often. Now it's just going to be an hour-long discussion of like, let's analyze your hamster versus your grandpa. Like that's just now.
Yeah, I was like, why did I love my hamster more than my grandpa?
Oh my goodness.
Like that was a precursor to me being like a weird animal person.
Do you consider yourself a weird animal person?
Not a weird animal person. I'm definitely an animal lover. In the pandemic, I fostered and got homes for like 4 or 5 dogs, but I'm not someone who, I also love people. I'm not like, if I could adopt old people and care for like, I mean, I wouldn't, and I wouldn't have the time. And then eventually I'd get resentful and then they die and I'd be sad. But
yes.
Yeah, I do like animals, especially dogs. I just went to the Gentle Barn.
What's that?
It's an animal sanctuary. You get to like hug cows and pet them, where they like rescue these like giant animals. Anyways, it doesn't matter, but I would consider myself a normal animal person, probably.
I love that there's something about, I don't know if it's like our age or being in LA or maybe both. There's something funny about needing to defend when you genuinely like animals or kids and you work in the business. Like people are like, wait, what? And you're like, am I allowed to, like I like kids, and people are like, well, would you want to have them? And I'm like, I mean, it's possible. And people are like, what? And you have to like defend it. And it's a fucking weird thing.
Yeah. You're like, sorry, I'm not a psychopath and I have emotions and ovaries that I cannot control. Even if it's like, I don't know how kids would fit into my life, but biologically my body is like, I like see babies and cry now. I'm like, like, oh no, what is this?
I love it. I think there's like specific podcasts now. There's like something that's like, it's only for comedian moms. I was like, there's a niche. I love that we're tapping into that because
Thank God.
Very weird lifestyle. Yeah, I don't fucking know how that will work out. Let's like not even think about that right now. But you know what?
Death is more happy.
Yeah, death is like the better move here. So would love if you could walk us through a little bit more of the timeline of where you grew up, who you grew up with through the experience of losing your dad.
Okay, well, strap in. It's a wild one, I guess. I was born in Germany, and then my parents, we moved to southern Mississippi when I was 3 years old. My dad was in the military, so just got restationed. And I lived there until I was about maybe 10. But when I was 8, my dad left. He was retired from the military. I didn't know he was into drugs at the time, but I learned that later. So he abandoned the family and went to Florida, as you do when you do drugs and abandon your family. It's meth mecca, I guess. And my mom, who I love but is a raving lunatic, packed us in a car and drove us from southern Mississippi to Anchorage, Alaska when I was in, I guess, 6th grade. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 11. I don't know, remember how old I was. So we were in a car with my mom for 13 days driving across the country. It was a nightmare. And then, yeah, from 6th grade until I graduated high school, I lived in Anchorage, Alaska with my mom, who remarried. So I had a brother. My mom had custody of both of us. She remarried a guy who had 2 younger boys. So then I got 2 stepbrothers. And it was like, I went from being the baby to tumultuous, chaotic household where I was somewhere in the middle. And my relationship with my dad is not typical, obviously. When he left, he wasn't like gone after he left. We didn't see him for like 6 months, and then he came back. And then as my parents got divorced, it was like, a third weekend of every month we'd see my dad, and then we went to see him for a couple weeks in the summer when we lived in Mississippi. But the weird thing is that like I talk about my dad leaving. I make jokes about it in my stand-up. I have for a while, but it's sort of like it doesn't paint a full picture, because I think the most fucked up and hard part about my dad leaving is like until he left, he was a very good dad. Like I was very much a daddy's girl. He's my best friend. We did everything together. He taught me about fishing. He taught me to play chess. I'm such a fucking fishing and chess. What a dork. Just like really fun. He was a big kid. He would always, like, when we were playing games in the yard or whatever, he'd get involved. He was really fun. He was the fun dad in the neighborhood. And then he just disappeared, which was really hard. But even after that, like, I don't think I wrapped my mind around really what was going on, or like, it's so hard to process trauma as a child. You don't fucking know what's happening, and you just go like, oh, I guess dad, he'll be back or whatever, So there must have been a big emergency. Things must be really bad. And I had a very hard relationship with my mother as a child because she has borderline personality disorder, which manifests in a lot of different ways, but she was not very kind to me as a child. I realized as I got older, my mom doesn't know how to show someone love if they don't need help. So it was easier for her with my brother, who had like a learning disability and needed a little extra like guidance. He had some, I don't know, special needs doesn't seem like the right term, but he just needed a little more parental oversight. And I was just born a 50-year-old woman. Like, my favorite show in 2nd grade was Oprah, and I liked Chicken Soup for the Soul. I was like, I'm good. I'm independent. So my dad leaving was hard. And then when we moved to Alaska, it became a thing where it's like, oh, well, we can't see him every other weekend. So I think we took one trip to see him like the summer after my first year there. And then I didn't see him again until I was like 16, because it was like, I mean, this was before the internet. So not that like it's so hard to get a plane ticket. I mean, people were traveling all the time, but it was expensive. And we were like very much, we were poor. Like, and I heard my mom later like bitch about, how little my dad was paying in child support. But I spent most of my childhood like very resentful toward my mother and being like, I want to live with my dad, which probably doesn't feel good to hear as a mother. But I just felt like she like moved me as far away from my dad as possible, and was just like, I spent a lot of time angry about that. Not even thinking about the fact that like your dad left. Like, it didn't register to me that like, well, maybe he didn't want to be around,
Right.
And so when I started applying for colleges, I got into places in a few different cities, but I ended up going to Florida. where my dad lived, and I was about like 2 hours away from him. So it was kind of this like, oh, I live close to my dad again. So I'd like every couple weekends go visit him and have dinner.
Oh, really?
Like just catch up. Yeah, he was remarried. He remarried very quickly. And I think that like now that I'm an adult and kind of can see the whole picture for what it is, I mean, there's been a ton of emotions obviously since he passed, but like I can't imagine how fucked up my mom was like after her husband left and we're in this small town in like gossipy southern Mississippi where people clutch their pearls. And like when my dad came back, he had a new girlfriend, which would eventually become his wife. Like he was like, I'm done, I'm out.
Right.
And I mean, after, you spend, I don't know, they'd been together for like 13 years. And then all of a sudden, like your life goes up in flames. Yeah, my reaction would be to run as well. Or maybe that's easy for me to say because what I've learned from my upbringing is to run at the sight of any heavy emotion. That's
also that. Love that.
Yeah. I'm like, that's been a journey in itself, learning that like you can just sit in an emotion. You don't have to be like, I have to leave. We can't be together. I feel anxiety. Then my senior year of college, my dad had talked about that he and my stepmom were thinking of moving to Texas. And I was like, why? They're like, oh, we want to change the scene or whatever. And then they just disappeared. They like moved to Texas, but like changed their phone number, didn't tell me. It was very strange behavior. And I was like, oh, I guess fuck me. It was weird because I don't even know. I had like the last time I hung out with my dad was my 21st birthday. And he took me out to dinner. It was like this really nice dinner. We got drinks. It was fun. And then he like left, changed his phone number. He had been paying my car insurance in college. Like he gave me his car when I moved to Florida because they got a new car. And then I got a phone call from the insurance and like, hey, like they tracked me down and like, hey, your insurance hasn't been paid. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like he went off the map. Like I was like, I don't know what financial crisis he got into or what the fuck happened, but he disappeared. And I did have to like, I mean, like if you didn't have money, you didn't have to take me out to dinner. Like what the fuck? Like was it my 21st birthday dinner that like put you over the edge? And like, obviously that was painful because it was like, oh, my dad left again. This is a weird pattern. But like, it wasn't like the first time he left where I could still call him or he was still in touch. Like he, as far as I was concerned, disappeared. And it's like, yeah, I guess I could have, I mean, I don't think he disappeared from everyone in his family. Like I'm sure if I had like dug up some aunts and uncles' numbers, I could have tracked him down, but like he was gone. And my initial reaction was like anger. And I spent a ton of time angry because it was like, dude, what the fuck? Like who just disappears? And I didn't talk to him. That was 2009, 2008. And I didn't hear from him. I didn't know where he was. This is kind of like, again, so emo and like dramatic. But I was graduating college the next year and I sent an invitation to him anyways, but I didn't have an address. I sent it to like his old house. Like, oh, maybe it'll get forwarded. Just like, why? Like, I'm like, I guess I'll just send it to your old address and hope for the best. And it bounced back.
Oh.
It bounced back with a forwarding address. And I was like, now I know where you live, bitch. Where it's like, I guess I could have gone like full psychopath and like shown up at his house when I was moving out to California, but I wouldn't have done that. But I forwarded. I was like, all right, I'll just send it. Didn't hear anything from him. Didn't get a phone call. I got a card in the mail that was like, see Dick. Dick wants to wish you a happy graduation. And it doesn't matter, but it was like one of the thin, like money size cards. You know, the ones that are made for like checks or cash and they're just like skinny and there was no money in it. And I was like, why? You couldn't even buy a full size card? Like, what the fuck, dude?
Wait, to clarify, was his name Dick?
No, I was like, what is this Dick and Jane? I was like, you just are a dick. Like, what is this?
Wait, what? Wait,
Yeah, it was
that's
so weird. I was like, what the fuck is this? Half of a card. Just send nothing. What are you doing? And it was like when I graduated high school, he had flown up to Anchorage with his wife and we all got dinner and they gave me $1,000 check. Like, this is a big deal. You're graduating high school. And I was like, I'm graduating college. You can't even like give me a phone call.
Right.
Like, what the fuck is happening?
Right.
So I was just mad. I was just like, dude, fuck you. And in reality, it's like, obviously I was extremely hurt, but it's something I've realized since then, like, is that there's a certain level, because I'm not someone who normally defaults to anger. I'm not an angry person. Usually when someone hurts me or I'm like, scorned or whatever, it's not like I'm out here like every time I'm betrayed. I don't live in a soap opera, but like my default is sad. But there's a certain level of sad where it's easier to cope if you just turn it into like fuck you.
Yes.
Fuck up. Like you just look at it like whatever. It's easier to just get mad and pretend you don't care than it is to bask in the emotions of abandonment.
Agree. Than to actually feel it's more vulnerable to be like, I'm affected by this, as opposed to just being like, I'm good, whatever, he sucks.
Yeah, it's like, fuck that guy, he's a lunatic. You know what I mean? And I didn't realize all of this until, I went years without talking to him. And my brother, who is older than me and is a drug addict, he's recovered now, allegedly. My brother was moving out of Alaska to try to get clean, allegedly. It turned out years later that was not the case. That is not what happened. But somehow he or my mom like tracked down my dad, which is wild, to like, so my brother could go live with them.
Oh, that's interesting.
To like try to get clean, which ended up being the opposite of a helpful thing, because my dad is like, we'll just do your drugs recreationally with me. I'm a fun dad, But I was like, even at this point, I didn't have my dad's phone number. And to be fair, I didn't ask my mom to help me find my dad. And my mom, by the way, just is like a sleuth. It's wild. I think she's a secret agent. She's worked for the government for years. When I was in college, she was in like Afghanistan and Iraq. Like if you need to track someone down, my mother will find them. My mother can tell you how to show up at their door. It's wild. But
that's amazing.
I still like didn't hear from him, nothing. And then, so I had one conversation with him very briefly in 2013. And that is because my brother was not on social media. He just wasn't, I guess when you're a drug addict, you have more important things to do than make a Facebook account. He's there now, shares a lot of memes, sober life.
Great.
But I received a message that one of his friends, his best friend growing up, who he had like stayed with a bunch. He always stayed at our house. He was kind of like a second brother to me in a lot of ways. He died. And I was like, I have to find my brother. I have to like tell my brother, who like doesn't have a cell phone and is a mess. And so I called my mom and like, do you know how to get a hold of like him? And my mom sends me a phone number and just goes, try this number. No context.
Try this. Love that.
So I call a phone number thinking this must be like my brother's phone number. And my dad answers the phone. And I was like, haven't heard from my dad in like 4 years. So I was like, oh, fuck. This is very sad, by the way. But I turned it into anger. I panicked, and instead of going, hey, Dad, or like, this is weird, I just went, can I speak to Tom? That's my brother's name. I just was like, can I speak to Tom?
Love it.
I was like,
direct.
What am I doing? Oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. And I had just gotten out of a breakup with someone who was abusive and like just emotionally manipulative, and was just not in a good place already. Like I just was in a very bad headspace.
Yeah.
And my dad goes, hey, Tom, there's somebody on the phone for you. And in the background, I hear my brother go, somebody's on your phone for me. Could it be, I don't know, your daughter? And my dad goes, I think I'd know if it was my own daughter. Yeah. Painful.
Wow.
And so I just was like, okay, I'm just going to not say anything to that. Because I was like, oh, this is so painful. And now I'm about to tell my brother his best friend's dead. This is a fun conversation. So I did
Wow.
that. And that was the last time I heard my dad's voice. That was 2013. And I remember there was a few times where eventually my brother did get a Facebook page. And like there was like one or two times where like photos of my dad popped up like on my brother's page. And I would be like, I want to like, at some point my dad got a Facebook and I was like, I should try to reach out to him. And I had a cousin who's older than me on my dad's side who like I've always looked up to. You know, she took us on a couple like fun, I'm your older cousin babysitting you outings as a kid. And she reached out to me at some point around maybe like 2014, 2015. And she's like, hey, you know, we connected. She's like, I hope you're doing well. It was just a Facebook message. She's like, I know it's none of my business and I don't really know what happened, but I just want to say that I think she's like, I think that you should consider maybe reaching out to your dad and try to forgive him. And she's like, it's none of my business. And I obviously respect and understand whatever you do. Her dad had died when she was younger. And like my aunt, who was her mom, had remarried. And so the guy she remarried was a very nice man. He was who I thought of as my uncle, very kind, good guy. And she loved him. She's like, I know I wish that I had more time with my dad. Oh, I'm getting sad. And I was like, cool, thank you. I appreciate that. And multiple times it's like, I should. And I just didn't because it was like, what do I say? And also there's a part of me, it's like, you're the dad. Like, you should be like, hey, whoops, my bad. Like, I really think there's a lot of like pride and anger in wanting when you feel like someone hurt you. It's a very normal, but a very immature, in my opinion, now thing to like want them to ask for your forgiveness. Like that you're like, oh, I will not give that to you unless you come to me. And like, it's very normal. That's like a normal thing because it's like, fuck you hurt me. And it's also like, I'm going to walk back into a fire that's burned me. No, like, what am I expecting to get out of that besides like, cool. And then maybe this is going to happen again. So I just didn't. And then around June of 2020, that same cousin who had reached out to me about my dad. And I'd see, like, I went through her town once on tour. She came. She's awesome. Like, she wasn't, there was no condition for her caring about me, like whether or not I had a relationship with my dad. And I felt like that was really nice because there were so many people in his family who I loved. And then once he was gone, I felt like I was like, I guess this isn't my family. I don't know. Her dad, not her dad, but the uncle who had been her like father figure who I knew, my Uncle Jim, he died in June from complications from COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's a thing that happens to a lot of people who smoke their whole life. A lot of, like, my mom has it now. I didn't know at the time, but my dad also had it. And in August, like there maybe like not long before that, but maybe less than a year, my dad had followed my Facebook fan page, but I was just holding on to so much anger that I just like banned him so he couldn't see the page. I was like, you don't get to like just come and quietly watch my page and like just distantly participate in my life. And it was just that. It's like his stepson had like randomly messaged me and like was like asking for help with like money.
Oh no.
And I was like, dude, what the fuck? Like, I haven't talked to you in 10 years and you're messaging me for money, which I later went back and apologized to him because I was like, I don't know. I reread the message and he was kind of asking, but he wasn't just like, can I have money? He was like, I don't know. I was just it was a very like, I clearly was very hurt and was like, dude, fuck you. But my dad had started following my page and I was like, nah. And then I like went and looked at his page and was just like, whatever. Fucking fuck you, dude. And then around August of 2020, he sent me a friend request on Facebook. And I left it there for a long time. I went back and forth and even talked to like my therapist about like, I don't know how to handle this. And I was like, he didn't send a message. He just sent a friend request. And like, again, I was like, what? Like,
Right.
what are you doing? And it just sat there. Like, I was like, well, I don't want to like, I felt weird denying it, but I was like, but I don't want to like,
Right.
I don't know. It's like I needed something more than just the internet friend request. Or that's what I wanted. And in retrospect, I mean, I realized a lot of things when he died. Well, I guess I'll come back to that. But like,
Yeah.
so cut to literally this time last year.
Mm-hmm.
Wild. Holy shit. Like right around election time. It was right after a couple days. It was the Saturday after the election when I think that's when they said Joe Biden was president, which is I do a bit about it now because my dad's a Republican. But then he's like, beep, I'm out. But like, I got a call from that same cousin, Tess. And she's like, hey, how are you? It's wild because I was just in the kitchen with my roommate at the time. You know, we'd all like were sequestered away. No one was going anywhere, making cookies or something. And I saw my phone ring and it was Tess. And I knew, I was like, there's only one reason she could possibly be calling. Oh no, I'm going to cry. So I answered the phone and I was like, here we go. And she goes, hey, your dad is not doing very well. And she's like, I know, shit. I hate crying on podcasts. Because you can like hear the snot.
People will
anyone's
love...
misophonic. They're like, oh God, the sounds.
I feel like the person crying hates it, but the people listening love it. And then they're going to like feel so connected and like grateful. So yeah, so thank you. When you think of end of life planning, what comes up for you? Have you thought about what your own funeral would look like, how your loved one would like to be remembered? Lantern is a website created by young people who have themselves lost parents. It's a platform to create your end-of-life plan easily online and for free. Their site even shares, why do we know how hard the end-of-life and death process can be? We've been there, and we were totally unprepared. Lantern began in the fall of 2018 with one sentence: I think we need to do something about death. The founder of Lantern, Liz Eddy, has actually been a guest on this podcast. You can even Google Liz Eddy Dying of Laughter to hear the full story as to how she started Lantern and why. It started with having lost her dad as a young child in elementary school and how her family was tasked with all of the planning that ensued after her dad died. They've since built out an awesome team and developed Lantern as the public benefit corporation that it is today. So what you do is you sign up, you can create a plan. There's a free and paid option. And you can talk about planning ahead, managing a death, writing down all of your or your loved one's wishes, how they see themselves going, what they'd like to do, who should manage their social media, what are their account passwords, how can you make the transition just a little bit easier. Their website also has workshops and guides and additional resources on how to find a funeral home, life insurance 101, sympathy gifts, etc. I can't recommend this platform more. And I'll be offering a discount for your first time using Lantern. And I'll put that link in the show notes. So head over to lantern.co to learn more, or click the link in my show notes for this episode to save a little bit of money. And you know we love doing that if you would like to make a plan using a paid option to have the most thorough, responsible, and organized end-of-life plan possible. I've even done it for myself. I don't specifically have a terminal illness, but I'm interested in death, as you all know. And I've found that creating an end-of-life plan is a gift that I can give my loved ones, hopefully very far in the future. So thanks for listening and considering Lantern. And now let's pop back over to the episode.
So my dad had gotten a blood clot that went to his lungs, and he already had lung problems. My dad's always been a very big guy. I didn't know until I saw him that he had gained a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, I know you guys aren't close, but I couldn't, I would feel terrible if I didn't let you know. She's like, I think that, fuck, I'm going to like sob. I think, if you want to see him, you gotta go see him now. So I just was like, okay. She's like, I can give you your stepmom's phone number. So I'm like, I haven't talked to this woman since 2008, 12 years. I was like, oh, all right. So I booked a ticket to fly out that night, and I called my stepmom and I was like, hi, this is weird. And she's like, don't worry about it being weird. She's like, life happens. It doesn't matter. We always still love you. And so he was in the hospital in Florida. So in Florida, like, which in retrospect, it's like people make a lot of jokes about Florida, as they should. But like, thankfully, because if he had been in the hospital anywhere else, I couldn't visit him. But because Florida's Florida, they're like, well, just 2 people at a time, every like 2 people per day.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So like,
amazing.
I boarded a plane in the middle of a pandemic and flew to Florida and like was like, all right, I'm gonna go see my dad. And I get to the hospital and the nurses are telling me about like, oh, his vitals are like this and his oxygen level is not very good. And you know, we're hoping there was just certain numbers like his oxygen level and his like blood pressure or heart rate needed to like go down. And like they're like, oh, and the other thing is that my stepmom had been like, so by the time I got to see him, it was Monday. I didn't get to because of the way the flight works. So he'd been intubated early Saturday. And they were like, he's not responsive. That's what everyone told me. But then the hospital staff was like, but you know, don't feel like you can't talk to him. From a lot of research, you know, says that, you know, people in that state can still hear you. But, you know, don't be surprised if he doesn't respond. So I walk in the hospital into the room and there's my dad like in a hospital gown and his hair was all gray and his hair had been gray the last time I saw him. He looked so much like it's so weird being like, holy shit, he was like the perfect amalgamation, like his face of like his parents, like how I remembered them because they were like my grandparents, they were old. And it was like crazy how much I could see them in him now when like I never would have noticed that as a kid. But I walk in and there's a nurse just like finishing his vitals and he's just there, you know, effectively sleeping or intubated, sedated. And I just was like, hey, Dad. And he woke up and he like rolled over and he looked right at me and like sat his head up a little bit. The nurse was like, oh, he's awake. And he just had like, he couldn't talk because when you're intubated, there's tubes down your throat. And that's why they keep you kind of sedated because it's very uncomfortable. But he like sat up a little and I like went over to him and held his hand and he had like tears in his eyes and he tried to talk, but you can't. So he like choked up on his thing and they're like, you know, he won't be able to talk, but you know, while he's awake, if you want to ask him yes or no questions, he could probably nod. And like, I just like, it was crazy because like, I wouldn't, first of all, I didn't expect him to like wake up when I said his name, but we had this whole moment that day of like, I was holding his hand and I was like, do you know who I am? And he like nodded his head yes. And I just said like, I'm sorry, which like prior to that, I would have been like, I have nothing to say sorry for. And like, I think any person looking at this situation would arguably like of how our relationship was would arguably say the same thing. But I realized that I was like, I don't know. It was like, you realize that he didn't know the proper way to communicate or like he didn't have the ability to like, I don't know. He grew up like my grandpa when he was older just started like disowning people. Like all of like his children, they'd piss him off and he'd be like, you're out of the family or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's like what his example was.
Right.
And it was just like, I said, I'm sorry. And like, there was like clear, like you could just see in his eyes, like this, like that he wanted to say that. And that he was like the regret that I could just see in his face. And I just said like, I was like, it's okay. I'm here now. And that it doesn't, whatever has happened doesn't matter. I'm here and I love you. And like, I just hung out with him all day. I had my boyfriend make a playlist of artists he likes and I played that music and he would come in and out of consciousness. And every time he woke up, it was like he was realizing I was there. Like, I think part of me thinks that like he was not sure if it was real, which honestly must have been really fucking scary. To be like, oh no, is this hell? Do I have to answer for what I've done now? But like, I told him I missed him, and he just like shook his head. And I was, and like I was like, did you miss me? And he like shook his head yes. And I was like, okay, well, you got to get better so you can get out of here and we can make up for lost time. And he's like, yeah. He like nodded his head, and his vitals went down that day. He was like started doing better, and then a nurse even came in and they're like, wow, his vitals have gone down. You should just stay here all night with him. And I was like, can I do that? And she's like, no. They're like, no, you have to leave at closing time. And I was like, cool, great. So I did leave at closing time. And then the next day I came back, and it was like his vitals had gotten worse, and like he wasn't really responding to anything. And like doctors were coming in and like saying different things. It's like a pain in the ass to fucking get a doctor in the goddamn ICU that you're like, and look, I get it. I'm very like, I respect the medical industry, and especially last year, they're going through hell, you know what I mean? And still are.
Yes.
So of course it's like, logically I knew like the doctor isn't like, fuck these people. It's like they are stretched thin,
Yes.
But that doesn't alleviate any of the stress of like, can someone come in here? And he was like, so what had happened is he had like a blood clot probably in his legs, because he had been having pain in his legs, and then it like got broken up. My stepmom like gave him a massage on his leg, because he also has like back problems and leg problems, so that was very normal for him to have pain. And then they think that like that broke it up, and it like split and went into his lungs. And because he already had a lung problem,
right,
and was overweight, which was like working against him, which like, I don't know, people don't want to have the conversation about what being overweight can do to your body, but it's like your body has to work harder. And when it's already not working well, that's an added layer. And so it was like his lungs were shutting down, and because of that, his kidneys were shutting down, because somehow those like work in tandem. I'm obviously not a doctor, but like he was on effectively this sort of, life support situation for a few days. And because he had seen my uncle who had COPD die, he had watched what someone who has COPD in advanced stages goes through. And part of that is like, there's a trach some people get where like if you've ever seen the old anti-smoking commercials that like, I can't, and they like talk through their throat.
Yeah.
And he had watched my uncle have one of those and said very clearly to my family that he's like, I don't want that.
Right.
If it's between, if I need that to live, I don't want to live. And that is something that my stepmom and my aunt or my cousin had made very clear, that they're like, we're hoping he pulls through because we know he doesn't want that. And it hit the point that they're like, well, our option to bring him back would be to do that. And it was like, they're like, we are doing everything we can. At this point, it's up to him and his body. Like, we are giving him every possible treatment. And there was one more time that he woke up, and we had like a brief conversation. And I told him that. I was like, listen, Dad, the doctors are doing this is the part that like hurts the most. No, there's no part that hurts the most. It all just fucking hurts. I was like, the doctors, they're doing everything they can for you. And I was like, but like, I know you don't want to have a trach. And he was like, no, I don't. I was like, okay, well, they said if you're gonna come back, it's up to you. You have to want to come back. You have to want to get better. You have to want to fight. And he shook his head. He said, okay. So I said, I asked him, I was like, do you want to fight? Do you want to keep going? And he said yes. He like shook his head yes. And I was like, okay, well then you have to do that. And it's wild thinking about it now, because like my dad is so fucking stubborn. He always was. Like, that was such a like thing with my mom and even my stepmom, they would always just like fight over dumb things because he'd just like refuse to like relinquish his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
He just sort of like got worse and worse. So he wasn't fighting. And at some point, the doctors, it wasn't my call. But they went to my stepmom and they're like, listen, he's not going to improve without, a trach is like the only possible way of him coming back. But it doesn't, even that is like, he would have to get to a certain level with his vitals for them to even consider doing that. And he wasn't getting there. So they're like, there's really not much we can do. So my stepmom, made the choice to like let him go. And I had been planning because we were like alternating seeing him because you could only see 2 people a day could see him. So my plan had been to see him on whatever, I think Wednesday or something. Or I have no idea what day of the week it was anymore. But she called me and she's like, listen, they don't think he's going to make it to then. So you should, they'll let, if someone's dying, they let everyone in. She's like, so I'm going to go there this morning. And I was about 2 hours away because I was staying at my aunt's in Tampa. Again, it was like just like college, wildly enough, because they had at some point moved back to Florida in the last like 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And literally like the hospital he was at was like near the exit where I used to go visit him in college. It was so wild. She's like, I'm going to go there now. And then, just get here as fast as you can because they just don't, they like just didn't, he was dying. It was like, as much as the timing was them going, here's the situation, her going, I need to know, I know I need to let him go. He was going,
Yeah.
So I grabbed my brother who lives in Florida and he had been coming with me he had come with me a few times. He lived in Tampa. So I was like, we got to go say goodbye to dad. So we drove as fast as we could and we got into the room, and he was still there, but they were moving him from the ICU to hospice care where they take people off of life support, I'm like, just go in and take as much time as you need, say whatever you need to say. So we went in and like said goodbye. And I guess they had told my stepmom that she like that people couldn't be in the room in hospice. And I don't know why they told her that. Cause like, I felt really bad later when I called her to tell her that I was in the room with him. She's like, they said I couldn't be there. And I was like, ugh.
Wow.
But like, I mean, we hung out with him just in his ICU room for like an hour. And like, I could just see his vitals getting worse and worse. And he wasn't responding. Like he was just on a machine was breathing for him. And we said our goodbyes and then they were transferring him and I was like, can we come with you? And like, yeah, of course. So I held his hand all the way down to, I'm sorry, I have so many boogers. Why did I not get tissues when I'm doing a death podcast?
Back in the day in when I would do it in person, I always brought them. And now I'm that asshole that's just like, you're on your own on your screen.
No, I mean like that, this should have been like, yeah, no shit. I should have like a roll of toilet paper here. And so I held his hand as they transferred him all the way down. And I just like talked to him the whole time. I was like, everything's okay. Like, you're fine. Everything's great. And we get into the room and he's on like the support and the hospice nurse who's going to take him off life support tells us, usually people, once we pull this off, that he could take one breath. He could be alive for a few more hours, based on his vitals. We think it's probably not. He'll probably go as soon as we pull him off. And so I just like, because they say that they can hear you. And like, I don't know, when it's like death is knocking at the door of someone you love, but you haven't seen and you have this fucked up relationship with. I just said like, okay, dad, we're okay. We love you. So it's like, I don't know what the fuck I believe for afterlives. Like I do mushrooms in the desert and I'm like, oh, there's more. And that's like a fucking weird hippie thing to say. But like my dad believed in God and like, loved America and was a cartoon of a Republican, but like, which is fine. But I just sort of, we're just sort of like, go see everybody, go to whatever's next, like we'll be okay. And like, I was still playing the Spotify playlist of music. My brother said goodbye to him in his very weird way of saying goodbye. My brother was like, I don't know, thinks he's black. like whatever. And they took him off life support. He took like 2 breaths. And I'm not kidding. It was during the guitar solo of Freebird. Which is like, can you be more of a cartoon of yourself? Which is like, honestly, for someone like that, what a perfect way to go. But like, for someone like me who's a comedian is like, really? You're doing this now? But like, I didn't need a nurse to come in and like be like, he's gone. Like, it's wild. I don't know if you were there, like in the room when your dad went, but like, I could feel his energy leave his body, which is like, sounds, if you have not experienced it, it sounds like some sort of stupid, weird hippie shit. But it was like, oh, his energy has moved out of his body and it's gone. Like it's dissipated. And that was it. And then my brother and I drove to a place called Blue Springs, where after my parents got divorced, my dad had a house for a while on a lake, and we'd take a boat there when we visited in the summer. And it's like this crystal clear water where you can see manatees swimming. And we just walked around and like remembered him. But yeah. And I realized like, oh, I mean, I had like, what a fucking weird guilt of social media. But I was like, oh, I think he knew that he didn't have long when he sent that Facebook friend request.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, I think he was like trying to it's like, I don't know. He came from a generation of men who were like taught to be men and be a man. And like, I realized that, I don't know. It's like, oh, I can't hold people to the account of like having my emotional intelligence or the emotions we like hope someone will have that we, read about on a how to be a healthy person fucking meme or whatever on Instagram. And like, I also didn't realize, like, I knew, like, I had repeated to people when I've told the story of my dad leaving, I'd gone like, oh, he was like a good dad before he left. But I like, when I tell you that the anger that I had toward my dad had like buried memories, and it was like a flood of like, it's wild that your brain will just be like, never mind all of the painful things. It was like a flood of all these like insanely good memories where I was like, oh, he was like, it's so weird. Because it's like, yeah, objectively, he was not a great dad. He left. But like, until he left, I was like, I had forgotten, and I didn't know how much pain I was carrying, that like, I loved my dad so much. And like, I still keep like, I still will get like floods of memories. Like, it's, you hear a song or I see something and it's like all of a sudden like, oh, it like trigger grief is fucking wild. And like, as hard as it was to go be like, oh, I have to look this man in the face who I haven't seen, and now he's dying. Like, because there always is that subconscious, like, you could be pissed and be like, fuck that person. But like, even if you don't like consciously acknowledge it, everybody has like this hope of like, but like maybe that there would be some sort of magic resolution where you'd have like a better relationship, So like, I'm grateful that I was able to see him when I did, because I think it offered me this opportunity to forgive him and forgive myself for not being the bigger person, for spending so much time going like, I shouldn't have to be the bigger person, and I shouldn't, like,
yeah.
But like, there's in situations, there's a lot of different situations in life where people go like, I shouldn't have to be the bigger person. But sometimes, like, if you look at all the facts and the abilities and the information that two parties have been given, everyone's living with their skill set and their learned habits. I mean, at some point, most of us get over the illusion that our parents are superheroes. Obviously, it helps when they abandon you. But I think that there is this little bit of illusion we all keep of, even when you see like your parents falter and can see how they like fucked up, we look at them as this like source of wisdom. Like, you think it's hard to wrap your mind around the fact that at some point, many of us, and especially I think if your parents did their job, will outgrow our parents in certain ways. And like, I don't think my dad had the emotional capacity. And it didn't hit me that like, well, maybe like I took him leaving as like, fuck you, I don't care. Where it's like, I don't know his brain or his insecurities and how he was like thinking about, and it doesn't make it okay. I still firmly believe someone will be better off with a 2-parent household, but like that he would like that he was, I mean, I don't know that he wasn't genuinely like, I think maybe I am actually holding them back and she'll be better without me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just like, I still have to, it's ongoing work to like continually forgive myself for not like acting on the moments that I was like, maybe I should just reach out. Maybe I should just say something and be grateful for the joy he did give me when he did. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really powerful, and I know it will resonate with people who have lost someone in a similar way. And people actually reach out to me, and sometimes they want episodes specifically about someone that you weren't necessarily in a quote unquote traditional relationship with, or like weren't as close to, or so like this is totally going to be so impactful for those people. So I really appreciate it.
yay.
And yay. No, I'm like, it's so powerful. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of people, right, that have had situations like this and we just don't talk about it. So you just don't know.
Yeah. And it's like, I wouldn't have known if you would have told me like that this is how I would feel when my dad died. I wouldn't have believed you. Cause like I assumed that I was going to be like, well, fuck him.
Wow.
You know, like I thought I would just like live in anger forever and be like, well, whatever doesn't affect me. And it's like, no, it does. Like it like lives in you.
Yes. What advice would you have for people who haven't spoken to their parent in a while?
To do it. Like I understand if you have to make a boundary because something's really unhealthy, I understand that. But like just accept that like you're not gonna get the cartoon like cookie cutter good parent you want and go like this is a person doing their best. Even some people's best sucks. But like cherish the time you have left. Just pull the trigger and like reach out and go like, hey, let's just connect.
Love it. Because it is the Dying of Laughter podcast, is there a comedic moment that has surrounded your grief experience, whether it was related to saying goodbye, thinking about your dad, or grieving? And if not, that is okay too. Sometimes another way to think of it is something so bizarre or like random that you just had to laugh.
I mean, so many. First of all, Leonard Skinner, when he died, I was just like, you're a cartoon of yourself. And the fact that he died as soon as they announced Joe Biden is like, he was like, beep, I'm out. Also, his last words were, don't forget to pick up my lottery tickets, which is so fucking optimistic and white trash. And I love it. But also, after he died, there were a couple, this is so dumb, but I went on a bike ride with my friend who still lives in Florida. And we saw this like beautiful hawk, like this really like, I'd never seen anything like this, like perched on a street sign, just watching us when we were biking by. And I had this moment of like, oh, that's like a sign from my dad. And then we drove through this beautiful like wooded area and we came out on another side and the hawk flew down and like landed again. Or maybe it was this like a different hawk that looks the same. And that felt really like very purely like, wow, it's a sign. But then for like 2 weeks afterwards, I just kept thinking like, every bird. I was like, Dad. And it's like, it's not, there's birds. You live in Florida. Like every bird is not your dad sending a message from the beyond. Like fucking, you think he's just going to come back and fly around as a bird? Like if there's an afterlife, he's like, peace you got, fuck off. I'm flying through space. Like, but
we love
the silly things of just, I don't know. And getting to uncover so many buried memories and like laugh about how just like cartoonishly redneck my dad was as a kid and how it was like so fun, like in ways that shaped me. And there's like things that are so dumb, but I'm like, man, that was so fun.
Yeah, I love it. And thank you for sharing the specifics of saying goodbye. I know is very challenging, and I of course very different situations, but my dad was also intubated and had tubes and all these things for years actually, and it was confusing, and I also was like saying goodbye. And so I'm relating to what you're saying of like the yes and the no was that was like such a thing that was
yes that
so
you're just
I
like,
you.
Are you even listening? Like you're just like,
it's hard, it's awkward, right? And
it is
asking the questions like, are you okay, like do you need anything? And they're probably like, yes, everything, I need to come back to life. And you're like, okay, sorry, I meant more like a water. Oh, you can't drink water. Like they're
just be like, I don't know how to help you.
Yeah,
and like not knowing, like, are you in pain? Are you? And my dad he was so big when I saw him too. So like when he needed like they had to like move him periodically so he's not like in this. I mean, they do that to everybody, but it was like a task. Like they were like, all right, send in the male nurses. And I was like, oh God, Dad.
Oh my gosh. I know so many things. It is very uncomfortable to see someone in that state, just in general, much less being related to them and seeing them being like so vulnerable and there's not really anything you can do. So I really do relate to that. I think that's cool that we can relate on that, even though it's like such a different story and different things and different timelines, like in the hospital with the tubes, with the yes or no, you know, it goes to show the commonalities of death. Like that is a lot of people won't die in that situation, but a lot of people will.
Like and it's crazy too, just even like I'm so neurotic. Like I live in a state of like, and I don't like it. It's something I actively work on, but like my brain is like, what could possibly go wrong in this situation? Let me figure out everything that could possibly be the worst case scenario. So in a hospital where he's like on a machine and all of a sudden like something starts beeping and I'm like, nurse. And it's like very normal. It's like, oh, something's just getting low, but I'm like, there's beeping. I'm like, what a nightmare I must have been for a staff that's already like so strained. And I was like, it's beeping. And they're like, yeah, it's just this. We're just someone's going to come change that. And I'm like, are you sure? Is he okay? And it's like, well, he's clearly not okay, but like.
That's scary. No, a beeping monitor, like that is a terrifying moment. Yeah, I agree with what you said about like, I respect the medical industry and yet there's so many unknowns. There's so many things. I'm like, I don't know about this. Thank gosh for those people. Thank gosh.
I know. I'm like, fuck that. We do need more of them. Like, this is why they always need nurses, because of people like me who are like, the machine's beeping. And somebody help me.
Please tell me how you chose Horny for Death as the title of your album. And I would love to hear more about how you infuse comedy with death. I've heard you talk about jokes about your dad when he was alive. I'm wondering if you have addressed jokes since he has been dead.
I have started to. They will unfortunately not be on that album because I had stuff that was ready to record in 2019. Right. And then I was like, just put it out there. But I mean, it's like
so recent, comedy goes tragedy plus time. Like I think people can laugh more as time goes by because they know you're okay. So what I'm really saying is you have a lot to look forward to. People laugh
so much material. Later. It's been a gift though, is like unlocking these memories has really, and I'm not like, gotta immediately find the comedy, but like, it is like turning into a lot of material. But I have a degenerative autoimmune disease. So like when I'm not in a good place, go to worst case scenario and think about like, how long till I whittle down and need a wheelchair and like am in constant pain. And so I just like, I don't know, Horny for Death in the album. It's a joke about, I'm just going to like peel back the curtain and tell you the joke, but it's about like people trying to get choked during sex and how like, does anyone even like being choked, or are we all just so excited to die as a species that like when you're being choked, you like see the light and you're like, oh yeah, I'm almost out of here. But like, originally it was a line from a different joke, and then I just moved it over there because I think about death all the time. I think about my funeral, and it's like, why doesn't anyone plan their funeral? Like we all plan a wedding, but everyone's like, oh, you're just family is left to be burdened and like hassled by a funeral director, which is a very weird sales position to get yourself into, I think. So it's just sort of this like, I don't know. I like life. I'm not on the verge of ending mine, but I've had moments where I've been like, it'd be really great to get out of here. Like, it was just not healthy. I know that, but like, it's, a constant struggle working on mental health. So yeah, just sort of, that's how it came about.
Love the specificity of that. And I will have to go listen to that joke in full. I did not know there was going to be a sexual twist there. So thank you for this surprise.
This album is very sexual, and I'm actually looking forward to, I think, whatever I do next. I'm playing with a few directions I want to go because I have just like a few big ideas, but I feel like I need to lean into one conceptually. And my last two albums have been very dirty. I'm a dirty person. I'm fine with that. But I'm excited to be getting into territory where like, oh, I haven't made a pussy joke in 15 minutes. This is crazy. Or it's like, oh, it's deeper, banana. No pun intended, but
love.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to peel, speaking of peeking behind the curtain, I mean, people love a good comedy moment. And they ask me for advice, and I'm like, you need to listen to some of my guests because they're really the ones that have more advice that I can give you. But yeah, can you talk a little bit more about your stand-up decisions? So in terms of releasing an album, even as an example, do you feel like that material, you've done it so many times that you feel like you're ready to put it out there? Is there some strategy on what gets released and what doesn't? Are you holding anything back for one day, things that can't be aired? I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's some combination of I was ready. I had like an hour plus of material that I feel strongly about. And I know at some point I will get sick of.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I feel so it's like a time capsule for me. And it felt like I had this chunk of material that really, like, if put together properly, had a good arc where there was like just organically it ends on something that calls back to something else. And it's whole, like the thematic, it's kind of, and some people just do an hour of like random jokes, but like there is, if anyone's going to listen to my album, I think it's better consumed from top to bottom. Because there is sort of, it's individually, all the tracks can make you laugh, but there is this sort of overarching like redemption, female empowerment, definitely in like a bit of a crazy way, but like it just sort of all meshed together where things address things from the beginning. So I was like, okay, this is a full hour. And I don't know. It was just sort of a feeling. And I was asked if I was interested in doing an album by Helium because I was hitting them up just to do shows. And they're like, do you have any interest in doing an album? And I had wanted to do something with it. Like, I was like, I don't know if I want to like film it or what. And then having someone else say that, I was like, actually, I do have this material. And sometimes for me, it's like, I'm ready to start getting into other things. And I need to force myself to like cut a cord with the material that it's like, because once you do an hour, and look, I'm not a big enough comedian that I think I can't do any of those jokes. Everyone knows them. No, they don't. I'm fucking nobody in the grand scheme of comedy clubs I go to. It's not everyone who comes hasn't seen all of my stuff, or heard all of it. But it's easy to lean on the stuff that you've worked on that you know works. And it's kind of like this exciting but scary place to be like, now time to work on things that don't always work, that I don't have all the punchlines for.
Right.
And I think I'm just ready. I've had an idea for a conceptual show I want to do, maybe about grief, like an hour on grief for years. But
That's awesome.
But I keep like, I'll start some stuff and then I put it aside because it doesn't fit everything else. And then when my dad died, I wasn't like, this is a big comedy event, but the way it started sparking my brain and thinking about my childhood. And I've started going into like having an alcoholic parent and having a dad that's like addicted to meth and like even talking about his death and my family. I think that's all better suited in its own. I don't know what it'll be. I don't know if it'll be a special. I don't know if it'll be another album, maybe like a one-woman show of some sort. But yeah, it's just like stuff all goes together because there's stuff that like just doesn't fit in. And also in my album, there's two jokes that I just like in the hour because I do it live. It's like I just forgot a joke and now it's a joke I love, and I'm like, I don't really know where else there's a place for that other than if I release a video on Instagram of it, which I probably will eventually. But I'm like, crap. And I could have gone like, I didn't get that joke, so scrap the whole hour. But I was like, and that's what I like about putting out live albums is that it's not perfect and neither is my stand-up. It's like raw, and I always go off a little bit and I don't stick to like the set list fully. And the more I've seen, like I've gone to, I went to a friend's stand-up taping. Like he has this big special and he's very talented. It was great, but like they had to cut and start over and like take things from the top because of tech stuff. And I'm like, I don't want that. Like I want organic in the room. I try to capture the feeling of like a club or like a live show as much as I can. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Would you do a special, like in terms of album versus special? Are you waiting for like some kind of material specifically for your special? Like I have no doubt.
I'm not waiting. I actually like, I'm going to put out clips now of like the stuff that's on the audio because now it's like already out. So I don't feel like putting out an Instagram clip like wastes anything.
Right.
But truth be told, this album has a lot of very physical bits that I think would have been better served visually. So I'm just going to utilize like YouTube and Instagram to get the full effect. They still work on their own, but I'm a very physical comedian. It just came down to, at this moment, nobody was knocking down my door to film a special and I don't have the budget to do it myself. So yeah, I think there's stuff that maybe wouldn't, it wouldn't matter. But I'm very physical, and I lean into that. I'm very silly and high energy. So I think if I win and if I have the budget for that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to know. I feel like sometimes like this question seems like it's like you also don't need to know what it is. But I wonder, I feel like a lot of comedians I know, like their goal is getting to an hour or, you know, and you have an hour and an hour and an hour and whatever else. I imagine you have many hours. So I wonder, what would your goal be in the next year? And do you have a goal of an all-time goal that you hope to reach? And if you're like, I don't fucking know, I'm just going to like keep doing this, that's cool too. But I wonder what comes to mind.
It's so funny because I'm in a place now where I'm really trying to figure that out. I don't know. I think I'm going to come up with some type of concept for an hour or just let the material form organically. Like I keep getting up and I keep, making new jokes or adding new tags to the stuff I've been working on. But like, I've been in sort of a mindfuck place for a while because my goals with stand up when I started were like, I want to make enough money. I want to make all my money doing stand up, which I do. And then, or like enough to survive. I also like, I'm not turning down other work if it comes my way, but like I pay all my bills with stand up. And then
we love.
Yeah.
Yes. And congrats, by the way. Yay. Women in comedy succeeding. Yeah. And it's
amazing. Like, it's hard work, but I'm doing it. And like, also I was like, I want to my name on the wall at the Comedy Store, which is like a thing a lot of comedians like dream of. And I did that.
You just had a marquee like the other week, right?
Yeah, I was on the marquee at the Laugh Factory too. So that was a big day for me.
So cool. Congratulations. I remember seeing that. I was like, yes, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. And I had to go like, because it's sometimes when you're in it, it's easy to just be like, okay, what's next? Cool. I just got to keep working. And I really had to take a moment and think about like 2011 me, I came out to LA with my little like GPS and would sit outside the Laugh Factory at like 4 p.m. in the sun on Tuesdays trying to get like a showcase and being like, I hope they pick me, and going like, oh, I'm on the marquee now. Like I am the thing that I would have thought was so cool then. Like I would have been like, I want to be like her. I'm doing that. And so I try to be good. I'm trying to be better at like taking a moment to breathe and like soak in when I do have an accomplishment and go like, this is actually really cool. This is thing I think I've worked hard for, but I don't have. I love a Netflix special, sure, but I don't. It's like sometimes I think if I could force myself to make something like that a goal, I do it because I know how driven I am when I do want something. But I just love doing stand up. I would like to keep doing it and let my audience grow. Like get to the point that I sell out clubs on weekends anytime I do them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is your life looking like these days? It seems like you're on the road all the time and traveling. And how does that work? Like, do you have someone that's booking you? Do you like reach out to clubs all the time? I know people know you. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, right now it's been me the whole time. It's only me, and I'm talking to a couple booking agents.
You'd be the perfect fit for that. I'm like,
I know. I mean, the amount of even clubs, like the clubs I work with, because they know me now, and I'll like email them and be like, hey, I would love to come back, after a certain amount of time since I've been there. Yeah. And like, they are literally like, why are you still emailing me? Why isn't somebody emailing for you? Why don't you have, like, of course I'm going to have you back. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so next step for you. That is like a goal. And I've actually, the last week and this week, I'm getting drinks with like multiple agents at like agencies that are specifically booking. And I had to make that. I think I also had to get clear with myself because would I love to like, it'd be cool to be on a TV show or write for a TV show, create a TV show. But like at the end of the day, I'm lying if I go into a meeting and tell you that my goal is anything except for to be great at stand up and like do stand up at the biggest capacity, the most I can. Like I just want to reach the most people in a live audience that I can and be able to make them laugh.
I feel like a booking agent, like, or, an agent in a stand-up department at one of these agencies is perfect for you because then it could take a little bit less of the time that you're spending. I mean, the emails and texting, like, and I'm like, of course not as far as you are. So I'm just like DMing people and emailing and introducing myself and sending tapes. Like, it's like it takes a lot of time.
Oh, yeah. And it takes away from your ability to do like creative shit. So it's like, I was actually on the cusp of, I was like, I'm just going to teach someone how to do my booking and pay them. And now I have these meetings, so I feel like it's hopefully all in good timing. We'll see if anything comes of it. And it's like, all right.
You're a shoe. Someone is going to want you. I feel like it's just like, do you want them? Because I feel like you've been doing it on your own. But
well, yeah, because I'm like, there's money to be made. I'm showing up to clubs are booking me by myself. Yes. And it's like, I don't have this reputation with a roster that I can use as some sort of fucking dick swinging thing. I make money. People are showing up to shows, which means There's going to be more money to be made. Like my audience is growing.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm at a place where I know I'm going to be okay and like it'll all work out. I just don't know what that looks like. But I am like, because I'm juggling a few projects at my wit's end time wise. And I've been fucking up like, even you, I was like, oh, I logged on yesterday thinking we were recording because my brain is a nightmare lately. And it's like, I could really use someone to like pick up a little of that slack.
Yes. And that's exactly what they'll do. And also what's cool is because you have the experience of having done it all yourself, what will be perfect for you is like, you know, I'm sure you've had friends. I have friends that like started out with like the best reps or whoever, like doing all this stuff for them. And then, you know, you get a little bit older and like, you're not the hot young new thing or whatever. And then
they fall off.
Yeah. And then you're no longer with them or whatever has happened. And people are like, always even ask me like, Chelsea, like, how do you like keep things going and moving and creating? I'm like, because I always have done that. So it's like you came from that. Any little help is a bonus, but you're not going to expect them to do like everything.
And I'm not going to like die if they go away. That's the thing is,
yes,
the amount of people who objectively in terms of credits and television stuff have more to sell themselves as than me that have come to me and been like, how do you do the road? And they're with like, they're at like CAA with some big agent. And I'm like,
yes,
I don't know. Fire your fucking agent. I don't know what to tell you. Do your own job.
Yeah.
Like if they're not doing it for you, and I'm not saying fire your agent, like whatever, but it's like,
yeah,
I just do it. I just reach out to people.
So what cities are up next for you this year?
I will be in Houston this weekend for Skankfest, and then I'm going to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Buffalo. I'm going to Eureka, California. There's a really cool club called Savage Henry I've been wanting to do for years, and I'm finally doing it. And I will be in Portland, San Francisco. I'm going to St. Paul, Minnesota, Tampa. My calendar, I'm done for the year. Like I'm now moving into 2022, which is really cool.
Wow, love. Love. That's so cool. Do you have a favorite city or a favorite club that you've played?
Cleveland, where I'm going, Hilarities is one of my favorite clubs. I love the staff there. Sam, who runs everything, is the coolest, but it's just like a good room, good people. It's like this perfect mix for me. I can do any audience, but it's like a city. So you have, you know, it's more of a melting pot, but it also has this sort of Midwesty kind of, I don't know, just like easy to talk to, friendly vibe where it's not like a city, like it's scary, a big city, like it's big city, small town. And I like it. And just good senses of humor. It's people who can laugh at shit, laugh at themselves, laugh at the fuckedness of the world and don't take themselves too seriously. So that's definitely, cool. There's a few, but that one's definitely up there.
That's awesome. What advice do you have for up and coming comedians in terms of getting themselves out there? I know mics and write and connect and like, I feel like I would know what you might say, but everyone's different and I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, no, definitely all of those things. Write as much as you can. Go to as many mics as you can. Go to mics that you don't like. Go to mics where you're like, actually, I don't feel comfortable here because you're not going to get your funniest in a safe space. And yes, everyone deserves like a safe space. And I'm not saying like, don't go where you're going to get like shanked, but like, like test yourself, put yourself in situations that it is harder. Don't like, it's easy. I think because there's so many little micro scenes in LA, it's easy to get comfortable and get in your routine. And that's nice. It's good to like have your friends you run into and have that community. I love that. But like, go to the room that you don't think will like your material. Like if you want to have strong material, do the places that are hard. Mm-hmm. And then trust your instincts also. Like if you think something's funny, lean into it. And also, this is going to sound like an asshole thing, but like quit if you stop loving it. Like if you don't, people get like, spend so much time being like, I'm going to make it. And then they get miserable and they haven't made it. And then they like feel like it's such a part of their identity. They can't quit. Like don't drive yourself crazy for art. Art should be a release of suffering, not the cause of it.
Woo, getting deep at the end here, JMS. No, it's so true. Like pivot with power, right? Like yes. You're not helping anyone by like being miserable and telling everyone how much you hate what you're doing and then like half-ass hoping that they book you. I'm like, this is not serving anyone. So.
I know. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help and advice. Like that's a thing I had to learn. I never wanted to ask for spots for years. I didn't want to bother anybody. Really? And it's like, and I was getting plenty of spots, just like getting lucky and somebody, hey, come to my show and like ask.
Yeah. Yeah. That's helpful. I think that it's what is cool about stand up too and different than the acting world. It's like acting, you can't like ask for the commercial. Like there is actually like a little bit more of a barrier to entry. Like it's like the audition comes or it doesn't. Stand up. Don't be afraid to ask, like you're saying. And like the worst case scenario is like they say no, or like probably just like won't respond because they got so many emails.
Yeah,
like,
and also don't take that personally. By the way, if they don't respond, first of all, they're just overloaded. If they say no, and it's never a no, it's a not right now. And like, okay, you're not a fit for that show. On to the next. Like, don't spend your time knocking at a door that was closed. Like, go to the next door. Come back to that door later.
Have you ever like emailed someone like you really wanted to do that show and they didn't respond, and then like the next year you emailed again, like, and then you just keep emailing them, or like did you let it go, or like have you had certain things like?
Oh
that,
yeah, no, I mean like absolutely. Where it like don't respond to me, or like I've gone from, oh, not right now, or like our calendar's pretty full, we have the comics we use, to like, oh yeah, come by. And like so many of the clubs that I work, it was like I kept emailing, not an annoying amount, but like I would always, include them in my emails. Hey, just reaching out again. And a lot of it was like, I think I caught them on the right day where they're like, I'm going to read some emails, and mine happened to be at the top.
Yes.
So like, don't be afraid to reach out, because a lot of the people that you see, they're like, that person always gets spots. Some of those people just never fucking stop asking for spots.
Right.
And then like people don't know, by the way, that you want to do their show. Like, don't assume that it's like, of course I would want to do your show. They have no idea. It's especially shows are run by comedians. We're all insecure fucking maniacs. So even if they have a good show, they're like, oh, that if you have any little bit of like a reputation for being remotely funny or talented, there's so many people that go like, oh, they're probably too busy for my show, or don't want to. People make up shit in their heads. They have arguments with people they've never had a conversation with, and just go like, she doesn't want to do these rooms. And it's like, what?
That's hilarious. At your level, would you accept, and I don't know, you don't have to answer whatever you want or don't want, but like, would you accept an unpaid spot, or like absolutely not? Or like in LA, would you still do a show that's like a favor to someone, or like probably not, or only if you're free?
I would do unpaid spots if I was absolutely sure nobody was getting paid for them. If I think that if you're charging for tickets, if there's even like a sniff that like the person running the show gets paid $300 a week to run a show at this bar, it's like, fuck you. Literally from the bottom of my heart, fuck you if you're not giving your comics at least like $10 and you're making money, because like there is no show without them. But yeah, no, it's like I want to do more of those shows. I want to like work out. I should just go to mics. It mostly has come down to me just being tired all the time. Like, yeah, absolutely. I would do. It's like and the only reason I wouldn't do the other things is because it's like just, on principle, like don't.
Yeah, lots of layers to all of this. Thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate your time. This was really cool to hear the sadness, the comedy, the tragedy, everything in between. Woo-hoo. Where can people, woohoo for death, Yes. Do you have quick closing thoughts for our listeners, or any questions for me?
No, I love that you're doing this. So thank you for giving a platform to this. I think what you're doing is so great. So yeah, no.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Ditto right back at you for your podcast, which is awesome. Where can people connect with you online, follow your pod, and of course, buy and listen to your album?
Yay. You can follow me on any of the major social media outlets at JMS Comedy. And then my podcast is called Ignorance is #blessed. Interviews with people of all walks of life. So check that out if you like hearing people's stories. And you can get my albums, Horny for Death, and my old album, Please Don't Leave Me, anywhere you listen to music. And also, I have a country song. So if anyone likes country music, anywhere you listen to music, there's a song called Now I Need Whiskey. If you want to just hear.
Wait, that is amazing. I did not know about this. Blessed that I am aware of this. I love it. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, right now it will, by the time this comes out, it will have not been nominated, and this will mean nothing. But right now it's on the consideration list for 5 different Grammys.
It is?
Yeah, it's not going to get them because music is a machine. I don't have a big record company, and that's not me being self-deprecating. That's just how it's going to be.
Sure.
But still kind of fucking cool. It's the first song I've ever put out, and it's on 5 consideration lists. And it's
my gosh,
the big
congratulations.
One, so.
That's freaking amazing.
Thank you. So I'm proud of it. I might try to do more now because it seems like it's being well received. So
awesome. JMS, this was fucking awesome. Like, I feel energized now by death.
Hey.
Is that allowed? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, that energy has to go somewhere. So let it energize you. Bloopers.
they
No, and you
actually
think you
want.
have to do everything.
Yeah, and you don't. You don't have. Hello? Whoa, did you hear that?
Oh no, did it like echo? Did it like da 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 da? This
JMS, that was so funny. It was like, you don't have to do anything. It
remixed you. Dude, I'm telling you, this microphone is a piece of shit.
Yodo, you only die once.